Hello and welcome to HWRD. In this episode we are going to unpack, unbox, let's say unwrap a two-time capsule, a mostly homebrew computer used by me, then Soviet teenager in the times around Soviet collapse. So very much like our Western counterparts who had interest in computers throughout the 80s and early 90s. There was a thriving homebrew computer culture in Soviet Union, maybe a decade off from the 1970s where it peaked in America and in the West. What has been remarkable is at core of it were often Western architectures, Western designs, re-implemented using Soviet components and materials available at hand in the country. So let's take a peek at what is inside the bag. Okay. So okay, brief introduction. This two-piece system is the final form of evolution of what has started as ZX Spectrum 48K clone. The clone was factory made. It was produced by one of the defense factories that has been actively trying to find some other business than making outdated defense equipment for Soviet Union, which was at the time, as mentioned, falling apart. And some of them that had to deal with electronics tried to diversify into home computing. ZX Spectrum has been a popular target for this kind of exploration and marketing efforts. And this did not come out of factory as a two-piece set. It was a self-contained unit called Santaka 002, which was designed in Lithuania but produced in my home Belarus by Red Banner something Order of Lenin factory in smack in the middle of Minsk, which I think at this point ceased to exist as a production company. And it came with a membrane-like, not quite rubber K original Spectrum, but pretty awful keyboard, a separate power supply unit, and fortunately a full set of schematics, which was useful because all of these Sinclair Spectrum clones originally used some variations of several popular designs circulating in reprints among the amateurs. Yes, even the factories used some derivative amateur designs. But enough of that, let's see a bit of on what we have here. The keyboard. Condition, I would say, is not okay. It says ZX Spectrum 128. We can get back to that later. It has a fairly okay tactile feedback with capacitive sensing elements. This is a capacitive keyboard as far as I know. It's adapted from one of the bigger systems. It was probably either SM series computers or some sort of educational terminal used at schools and universities. And these amateur Spectrum clones I'm talking about, they never had as luxurious keyboard, and as you see, it's not really a Spectrum keyboard layout, it's more like a PC layout with some odd components and keys. And how this keyboard works, we'll get on that later. It's, as you see, it is connected with a rather poorly preserved 5-pin DIN jack. This whole system was found by accident by my parents in their garage, where it was stored for last 22 years, I think. I don't think I used this computer ever since approximately year 2000. So there was also a monitor with it, but it was a bit expensive to ship it over here to Norway, where I am now. So it's only the computer that made it here so far, and not the display unit. The display unit is monochrome, so it's also probably not the ideal. It was just coincidental to what I could find and use at the time. It has a floppy drive, as you see. It still has a, wow, Soviet-made floppy disk in it. The text says double density 2x80. It's Teardown formatted, I believe. Yeah, the disk drive still closes, that I guess is a good sign. So let us take a peek inside, remove the keyboard and open the chassis. So we have two flatheads, meshing screws, two loose. I have to say the chassis itself is also obviously nothing to do with Sinclair Spectrum clone. It comes from ES 1840, I think it's called. It's one of the so-called unified series personal computers, a Soviet standard, which was nothing more than a good clone of good old IBM PC. But it was made in two chassis due to lower integration and overall lower technological level of Soviet electronics at the time. They built the thing in two such boxes, and this is the box that had the floppy drives and floppy drive controller and a modest power supply to drive it. You can see still power supply plug over here. So let's open it. Yeah, no moles, no reds, no dead mice inside, as far as I see. Let me remove the lid. Okay, it just leaves like that, and it's terrible. It smells of actually old electric tape. Yeah, I think that's the smell pretty much. A design feature, should I say, of this computer is that everything is held pretty loosely. Okay, this is the power cord that I'm going to extract. Okay, you see no grounding plug on that, no such luxuries. This is the power supply actuator, as say this ES series power supply. Oh my god. This paper, I think it had a function of holding this PCB immutable against the lid. Okay. There is a text It's historical. It says technology of production of natural coffee in beans and ground by a student of economic faculty. Oh god. 1995, that gives you a date. It was, I guess, one of my fellow students. I didn't study economy, but many people who live within the same dorm did. Okay. Yeah, nothing deteriorating too much. I expected worse. I think I see some traces of corrosion on here. Let me try to fix you a close-up. Okay, you see these ROM chips. I have a whooping 8 pieces of 2 kilobyte each ROM chips. I would guess that's an analog of the Western 2716, was that? 2K by 8 bits. And as you see, these are in SERDIP packages, so this shows the nature of military conversion manufacture. They probably had a bunch of those from unrelated military production. These are normally expensive chips with gold-plated contacts and are rated for all kinds of mechanical and corrosion stress, I guess, which is handy because I see that they have corroded at top, at least several of them. These numbers handwritten on them, I guess they refer to production tape, magnetic tape, or even punch tape where they were programmed from. These are UV erasable EEPROM chips. They have their windows sealed with epoxy or something like that. So you can see some modifications that's been made. As I mentioned, this is a 48K computer originally, but you see it went quite a bit beyond that. We have piggyback riders, 8 Soviet RU5 chips, which are, I think, give us a total of 64K in 1 bit each, so 64 kilobytes of additional memory soldered on. We have a row of these are 2K RU6 chips, which I think provide lower 16 kilobytes of memory. So this is was a 16 plus 34 memory layout, plus 16 for ROM, of course, and then I got 64 of these on top, and I think I still have 16 extra kilobytes to account for of the extra memory. Where is it missing? This is also piggybacking some logic circuit. It's a gate, I guess. LE1, I would have to look it up what it does. The actual processor is hiding right underneath here. Zilog Z80 CPU, and there is our bug, a dead bug, actually a dead bug on it. As you see, it holds pretty precariously without any sort of fixture at all. We have a dielectric board here, which I guess served as an insulation, and we have another piece of dielectric board here. Yeah, pretty rough job. I wasn't very good at systems design now. I work as an embedded systems developer and head of development in a hardware company, but back then I was not so much focused on system design, I'm afraid. This some expansion, so this is also loose. We have also this board which is loose. Let us see what relation between those. Okay. You know, Wargames, the book, it mentions that the homebrew computer the main character used was held together with bits of bubble gum, but we didn't have that much bubble gum in Soviet Union, you know. So it's pretty loose. Okay, let me turn the thing around so that we attack it from the front. Right, like this. Okay, zoom in out a bit. What do we have here? Let me see. Of course, the speaker, which uses special magnetic mounting to the power supply. We have, I believe, a slightly less corroded, but still corroded 5-pin DIN for keyboard input, which means this one, this little guy here. Yes, this little guy here with unmarked chips is the keyboard decoder. This was bought as a kit, the keyboard I showed you earlier and the decoder kit for it. And it has all markings on the chip filed off. That was trademark protection, copyright protection, IP protection that was done by entrepreneurial amateurs that were selling this stuff around. Much of this stuff was sourced on radio market in Minsk, where you would typically go for either loose components or sub-assemblies or kits like this. So I believe this is some serial protocol decoder for the keyboard, which is likely modified as well. I seem to remember the keyboard was able to record macros and you could assign it to functional keys. So it probably is interesting to reverse engineer it eventually and see what's inside, what kind of microcontroller it uses inside. But that's for later. So this is, I believe, a Centronics cable. I think it was historically my latest add-on to it, and add-on rests on. Okay, let me zoom in. So this guy's Yamaha sound synth, I think that's an analog of AY3 8910. Yes, AY3 8910, that is a 3-channel sound synthesizer, very common in arcades of early 90s, and it was original sound chip and Spectrum Plus and Spectrum 128. So the printer port, I believe I used in my freshman year of the university. I used it to write a couple reports using a text editor my buddy wrote, and I wrote a driver for it. So it was a cooperation. He wrote the text editor, I wrote the driver for printer and hooked up the printer. And we had a report delivery because, believe it or not, in around early 90s in Belarus, it was not necessarily trivial to come up for a printer Okay. Let me zoom in here. The memory chips, you can see actually the chip select line soldered over it. Wow, this is absolutely marvelous. And probably some logic hooking out from a 128 conversion, which is not really in one piece anywhere, but smeared as a bunch of boards. There is not a one memory controller or anything. I think it's pretty much discrete solution. So a lot of these logic chips, they do a ULI function as mentioned. And this one is, I'm not sure what this guy does. Some caps which look in good order so far. These three guys on the end are tape ports, and we have disk drive underneath. You know, there were three types of disk drives popular among amateurs, all were 5¼ inch, and the best one was teak, of course, a Japanese one, and the next best was Zelenogorsk from one of the factories not far from Moscow, and there was also a Bulgarian version of it, which was also a decent one. But the worst was one coming from Yerevan, I believe, from Armenia. I never actually seen anyone using it. They just had so bad reputation that everyone avoided buying them. So this is Zelenograd, I believe. Okay, what we have here, this is a reset button. The idea is it hangs out. It was originally placed here. Remove it so that I could access it from via front panel or hole in front panel. And this little guy is a snapshot function for disk controller, which leads me to believe that under this disk drive, yeah, looking by where the cables go, under the disk drive there is actually the disk controller. Let me try to get you a fix with a picture and zoom in. Yeah, do you see that guy? It's kind of hard to see, but this is actually a floppy disk controller circuit, and you bet it's loose. It's sitting on a piece of cardboard, and it's probably not, no, it's actually screwed down. We found one piece of circuit that is screwed down on this computer. And okay, don't get distracted by banana sticker. Bananas were a luxury in Soviet Union, as I mentioned, and guess I should do a few words about the stickers. We have the Dole, which is a banana company from Ecuador sticker. Bananas were pretty precious on the break of early 90s. So I put a sticker because I had it. We have a Sony HF, I believe it's from a tape, either videotape or cassette tape. And on the chassis we have nothing less than a Star Wars sticker. Yes, you better believe it. On the chassis we have a C3PO. How cool is that? This says Star Wars in Russian. This is probably from Europe, from a chewing gum. It was insanely popular. Why is it there? Because Star Wars is cool. So yeah, to wrap it up, I think this pretty much it. This PCB, yeah, I forgot this one. This guy is from original set of Santaka boards, and this is a display output. I believe you get sRGB out of this one, which was never hooked to color monitor. It was just always running at black and white, while as much as I wanted it. So I didn't use color all that much. What I think I'm going to do next, I'm going to examine the system, how much it rusted, what kind of issues could be with capacitors and rust in the PSU. I'll power up the PSU and see if it gets enough output, check the circuit for obvious failures, and try to get a run of it. I would also probably need some form of converting display signal to something that could be run on a modern monitor or a TV, either to HD, or maybe if it's too much to ask, to a composite input from sRGB. So that's something to explore, but for now this is basically it. This is the system as it evolved from a simple Santaka ZX Spectrum 48 clone to a 128K clone with Teardown operating system, beta disk interface for you in the Britain, and some non-standard extras. I remember I used to have more boards made for it, which are not together with this set, but I could try to ask my parents if they have anything laying about. Maybe there is something more to it than just what I received here. So okay, I'll start cleaning up on this. See you next time.